Today we're going to be working on this project. It's a sun catcher made in a mosaic style, and we used black frit to do the grout line. So you can either think of this as like a mosaic style or a stained glass style. I did a mix of opalescent and clear glass. This is a great way to use some of your scrap, and you don't have to make it into a sun catcher. I mean, you can make anything with this. You can make coasters. I was actually initially going to make a set of coasters, but I made this so large that I was like, that's a big coaster, so I decided to put the hooks in it and make it a sun catcher instead. So it's a quick project, it's fun, and as I said, it's a good way to use up your scrap. So let's get started. This project will only require one firing. It's quick and easy and very versatile. Like I said, this project is great for scrap. So not just the mosaic pieces, but even the base can be done with pieces of scrap tecta. So I have these two pieces, and if I put them together, they're 4 3/4 and 4 3/4. Because I'm using scrap pieces in two separate pieces, I'm going to be working directly on my kiln shelf, so I don't have to move this piece back and forth. So what I'm going to start with is I'm going to create a barrier around my piece. So when I put the frit in, which will be like our mosaic grout or stained glass lead lines, if you will, I don't want it to spill out. So I'm going to be taking some tape, and usually this is painter's tape, which it can be removed very easily. I would use one that's not as wide, a narrower one, but this is the only one I had on hand. So what I do is I fold it over and just leave an edge that's sticky. It's like as wide as my piece of glass is thick, so that when I stick it here, you'll see it sticks right at the edge, and then this piece is not sticky. So when I remove the piece of tape, the glass frit that's there, or the piece of glass, is not going to move with the piece of tape when I'm removing it. So I used this one just as an example, and then I did some larger ones that I'm going to be putting around. This piece of tape can also help to ensure that your bottom pieces don't really move around as you're working, so you could try to make this rather tight. I cut up various pieces of glass in triangular shapes. I find triangles to be very versatile, and I created my designs directly onto my clear base. Then I removed the pieces and cleaned them and placed them on a paper towel next to me, saving the design. This way I knew exactly where each piece would go back onto the tecta. So I will be using my trusty gel. And I'll be putting a dot under the piece and then placing it. So you really want to avoid having these huge gaps, because then it's going to be a big blob of black. So I'm trying to fill those out with tiny little filler pieces. Like for example, here I have a big gap missing. I'm going to take one of my pieces of green and just using my Mosaic nippers, I'm going to cut that little triangle and it'll fit right in here. Now, one thing I did forget to put in, and I should have done that at the beginning, is I'm going to put in these 2 wires towards the edges of the piece to hang it, because it's going to hang in like a window since it's going to be a sun catcher. I have these wires, which are high temperature wires that you can embed in your glass. And what I usually like to do is to curl the tines using these round tip pliers. They look better, I find, and it allows the glass a larger surface to catch on. So those are going to go like one over here and one over here. So I'm going to turn this over and I'm going to mark on my tape where I'm going to be placing them so I can put a little slit in the tape so they can poke out. So I cut a piece out of the tape where the wire is going to poke out, and since there's not going to be any frit there, we don't have the issue of it, trying to spill out of that hole. And then anything I moved, I'm just going to try to put back into place. So we don't want huge gaps, but we also don't want teeny tiny gaps, because we want the frit to be able to go between the pieces. So I'm just going to go back and kind of move things around. Once I'm satisfied with the placement of all my pieces, I'll go in and use my fine frit in opalescent black and fill in those gaps. If you're watching and you're thinking, Glenn, you didn't just fill those gaps, you made a huge mess. Don't worry. We're gonna go back in with the brush and sweep everything off our main pieces. And that's one of the main reasons I like to put the gel underneath. It's so when we're doing this part, the pieces don't move. So admittedly, putting the grout line is quite tedious and it takes time, but in the end, you know, all this work is worth it. Make sure to underfill your grout lines because you're gonna need somewhere to move that frit around if it's on your main pieces, and because we have this tape, you don't really have an exit for it to go and then to brush it off. Now, how do we ensure that once we take the tape off, our frit doesn't just roll away? Well, I learned this neat trick that if you use a little squeeze bottle with hairspray in it, it will act as a very good glue for frit. You can, some people will spray with this, like this is just cheap regular hairspray. It will spray onto the piece, but I found that it creates devitrification, so haziness on the surface of the glass, especially when I'm just going to be tack fusing. I'm not going to be full fusing, I'm going to be more of a contour fuse because I want to keep that texture. So I'll just go in. Ooh. Going to go in and add a few drops of hairspray. So I'll be waiting for all of this to dry up overnight, and I'll be putting this in the kiln on a contour fuse tomorrow morning. So now it's the next morning. I'm going to remove the tape. Perfect. I come back with my brush and clean off anything that's fallen. Okay, so we're going to take this to a contour fuse, and because we have varying thicknesses here, we're going to anneal for a longer time because the different thicknesses will cool down at different rates, and we don't want this piece to break. So the rule of thumb is you take your thickest thickness and then you double that. So my thickest thickness is 6 millimeters, so I'm gonna double that to 12 millimeters, and you look at the annealing schedule for something that's 12 millimeters thick. So for example, the lighter blue glass here I think was 2 millimeters, so that one is at 5 millimeters, and this is at 6 millimeters, and then you have the varying thicknesses of our grout lines. So you just want to make sure that everything cools down at a good rate, so anneal for longer. Here's our piece out of the kiln. What I like about a contour fuse is that it rounds off all the edges so there's nothing sharp. Because we used a scrap piece on the back side, the separation between the two pieces is kind of visible. But if you'd done a full fuse, that would practically go away. So now the last step is to just add something to hang this by, and I have this chain, and I'm going to add it using my pliers. And here it is with the chain. And of course you don't need to use a chain, you don't have to use a chain. You could use fishing wire, you can use a piece of leather cording, whatever you like, or you could even like put a hook in the back and just hook it somewhere. And there it is. So I hope you enjoyed this project, and if you did, please give this video a like, and thank you to all my new subscribers. I love watching my subscriber numbers go up every day now, so it's very, very exciting for me. I love to read your comments and your suggestions, and if you do use one of my projects to make something, please tag me on my Instagram. I'm at gscreations_handmade. And as always, all my information is in the description box below. I'll leave you with a few pictures and see you next time.